Welcome, brothers and sisters, to another episode of Friday Night Fire. I'm David J. Dill, host of the Soulside Talk Show. Glad you could be with me one more time, and I'm glad to be with you one more time. Brothers and sisters, I just want to follow up on last week's episode. There were some things we discussed regarding our desires and the manifestation of our desires and not fighting our own desires, and how to make some of the negativity in our lives stop. Okay. So, what I want to do on tonight is just point out some of the things that we see in Scripture, some of the things that we see God doing before He creates us in His image and in His likeness. One of the first things we see in the Scripture regarding the world and the earth and everything that God created, we see one of the first things that the scripture says in Genesis 1. It talks about the fact that there was darkness and there was void in existence. And then we see God making certain decrees and declarations. He states his intent and he says, "Let there be light." The scripture says that the atmosphere was dark, okay? But we don't see God focusing, or we don't see him making any statements about the darkness. The only thing we see him making a statement about is what he wants to see happen next. Let there be light. You don't see him fighting the darkness. You don't see him applying a lot of energy towards the darkness. And this is one of the things that I was discussing towards the end of last week's episode. What we see God doing is speaking what he wants to see. Okay? The darkness was a condition that he didn't want to see any more of, right? He wanted to see its opposite. He focused on what he wanted to see, and then that's the only thing you see him speaking. You don't see him speaking, "Darkness, cease to exist." We don't see him saying that, right? We see him saying, "Let there be light." And then the next thing you read in scripture, and there was light. There was no resistance. There was no opposition to what he said. He simply states what he wants, and boom, what he wants comes into being. Right? So this is the thing this is the model he sets before us as he creates this and creates that throughout Genesis 1, right? And so everything we see him saying, "Let there be" to, the next thing you read, and there was, you see. And so, when he creates mankind in his image and in his likeness, he says, "Let us create man in our image and likeness. Let them have dominion," right? You read that in Genesis 1, 26, 27, and 28. Right in there, you see what his intention is in the way of replicating himself through us, right? You go to Genesis 2 and 7, you see how he did it. You see him breathing into man's nostrils. You see him forming man of the dust of the earth, and then you see him breathing into that body of flesh, where we read, and then the words we read are, "And man became a living soul." So what do we actually see right there? What we see is God becoming man, and we see man becoming God in the earth. Man has been given dominion in the earth. Man has the ability to call forth what he wants to see happen next, the same way we see God doing everything else he did before he created us, right? So there is nothing to hold you back from whatever it is you want to see happen next. We see in scripture where he says all things are possible to those who believe. And so as we've been in this series discussing Dr. Albert Einstein's statement where he says that the most important decision we make is whether we believe we live in a hostile or a friendly universe. We've been discussing the fact that beliefs are nothing more than thoughts that we continuously practice. Okay, again and again, again and again. You know, whether we're speaking those things verbally, these things are going on inside of our heads, these thoughts. We're having inner conversations with ourselves. And based on the trains of thought that we are creating in our own minds, those trains of thought are carrying us, they're taking us someplace. And whether that place is preferred or unpreferred, whether it's wanted or unwanted, you know, whether those thoughts are about things that we like or don't like, we have a chance to feel what that's like in our hearts. We can know whether what we are thinking about is favorable or not based on how we feel. And we get a chance to determine how much more energy we want to apply to those thoughts before those thoughts become things. You practice a thought long enough and hard enough, all of a sudden we find that those thoughts harden into fact. They become physical reality, you see. And everything that is formed into physical reality, once it has formed into physical reality, it is now a past tense reality when compared to what's going to come next. That is, unless we think about something different. If we keep thinking about the same thing over and over again, in other words, something that's already a physical reality in our presence, whether that situation is wanted or unwanted, if we keep applying more and more thoughts to that reality that's already in existence, then nothing really changes. All we're really doing is kind of recreating the same scenario over and over again. But once we begin to take a different train of thought, once we begin to think about what we want to see, okay, in other words, whatever change we make in the direction of our thoughts, that will determine what changes in the next reality, what comes forth in the next reality. We are powerful creators. We are the creators of our own experiences. And so Dr. Albert Einstein's statement, he's letting us know, look, you know, whatever it is you choose to believe, that's what you're going to activate. Whatever thoughts you're going to, you know, continuously repeat in your mind and in your heart, that's the vibration that's going to set up within you. And because of the fact that the electromagnetic field of the heart is 500 times stronger than that of the brain, you know, Christ said that the issues of life, they flow from the heart, right? And so whatever we're thinking about, whatever beliefs we are forming, you see, these are the realities we're going to activate. That's just how simple it is. All right. It really can't get much simpler than that. And sometimes we have to step up to simplicity, right? So really what I want to discuss with you, it has to do with whether what you want is a possibility, if it's a reality or not. Okay. And so let me just let you know, if you look at the model God set for us right there in Genesis 1, You see, whatever it is that you're thinking about, it's real. Whether you can see it physically yet or not, just by virtue of the fact that you're thinking about it. You see, thoughts become things. And so if you were to, let's use the farmer's example. Let's use your imagination. Let's illustrate your imagination as being the seed that's been planted. It's invisible and yet very real. And the scripture says, as long as the earth remains, there will be seed time and harvest. So there's a buffer of time in this earth realm that does not exist where we came from. Where we came from, I'm talking about the heavenly realm, the eternal essence of where we came from. When we think about a thing, when we want a thing, when we express our desire for a thing, boom, it manifests instantly. That's what happens. So in this essence, we don't really have to hope for something that's already there. You kind of getting what I'm saying? See, we've been conditioned to believe we can't have what we want in this world. We almost worship the government of democracy. See, we believe it's everybody gets a vote. And in this situation where some people want something and some people don't want that same something, we take a vote and we try to determine, whether that thing is going to happen based on a majority vote. But no such system of government exists where we came from. Where we came from is kingdom life. And what the king says goes. And that concept kind of scares us in this world because there are people who are bent on doing evil things. And so we're concerned about their ability to make evil happen. And so we say that they shouldn't have the ability to make evil happen to me. And what we don't realize is that everybody gets what they think about, whether they want it or not. The great equalizer in the planet is the law of attraction. Everybody is attracting what they're thinking about. We are magnets. What that means is I don't have the ability to just assert or make something happen in your world, and you don't have the ability to just make something happen in my world. Each and every one of us is creating our own experiences based on the law of attraction. The law of attraction is a biblical concept. There are other spiritual gurus out here teaching it, okay? But for those of us in the church who have been raised a certain way, to think a certain way, we need to understand that that phrase, law of attraction, even though you don't see it written in scripture, the concept of it is through and through. Everybody has been created the same image and likeness. We are creators. And we live in an attraction-based universe that is responding to the vibrations we got going on from within. And those vibrations exist in our hearts and are emanating from our hearts based on our thought life. Our thought life. Sometimes you don't have to speak a thing. You just think about it long enough and hard enough, and boom, it's happening because that vibration is going on from within. That's how powerful we are as creators. Think about it. Been created in the image and the likeness of the Creator to create the same way He creates. All right. Pray you come back and visit one more episode of Friday Night Fire. All right. My name is David J. Dill, host of the Soul Side Talk Show. Glad you could join me tonight. Come back next week and we're going to talk about this subject matter some more. All right. Peace and may the Lord richly bless you. All right.